Good morning, beloved. It is the accursed day, Valentine's Day. I'm going to try to encourage you. I'm going to start a petition here to abolish this horrible day. Now, there is nothing worse than for the majority of us men than to have to deal with this and the unrealistic expectations and for what? I remember every year, I've seen it so many times that coming home from work, after guys worked all day, realizing that there is some sort of an obligation, and many women will punish you if you don't do something on this particular random day that's been chosen and put upon us to bring something home. And if you go to the supermarket tonight, you will see a whole bunch of very unhappy men rushing around buying garbage candy, low-quality flowers, with an attempt to try to appease their wives at home. And I never have liked it. I never have enjoyed it. It has been a tremendous burden, and I think a lot of Proho does not need someone to tell us what day that we need to do something nice for our wives. It is a way of life. It is how we show our love for our wives. I think better than coming home with a bunch of garbage from China and low-quality sugary food and candy would be the fact that the man went out and worked hard that day and provided for his family and sacrificed his own wants and desires and his body and his lifeblood sometimes to provide for his families. That's what should be recognized. And for a woman to punish a man because he doesn't want to do this or to bring some trinket home, well, it just rubs me the wrong way. And I don't participate in it. Valentine's Day, I choose and when I honor my woman, not because some arbitrary day that people say to me. Now I uploaded a short this morning laying this out, my philosophy on Valentine's Day, and there was an avalanche of blue-pilled simps that just do not like that. And mo woman and mo chivalry and all of these things. You know, those things are dead, gentlemen. Those were killed by modern feminism when they told us that they wanted everything to be equal, when they showed us by example that they didn't want us holding doors for them anymore, they didn't want us approaching them, didn't want them seeing them as the weaker sex, then they are getting what they deserve. So I don't, they created their own problem, their own thing. So I reject it. I don't like it. I think that it should be completely abolished. You know, these things, just because we've done something for so long, we think that we have to continue to do them. We do not. We do not. The world is changing. God is opening our eyes to many of our mistakes and things that we've just done out of routine and habit that are a burden to us. And I want to throw that burden off, and I think there's a lot of you that feel the same way. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do nice things for our women. Of course not. We do nice things for our women daily. Every day, getting up for work, taking care of them, showing them love, keeping a roof over their head, providing for them. You know, an honorable woman deserves to be respected. I show great honor to Mrs. W. She is a virtuous, faithful, and honorable woman. She's not out there in those streets. You know, she has earned my respect. She's been my companion for coming on 20 years. She has been shoulder to shoulder with me through the good times and the bad times. She's always had a positive attitude. She's always lifted me up. She's always encouraged me to do better. I serve her daily. That could be making coffee for her. That may be helping her pick up around the house, giving her some free time. I mean, it's a million different things that we do to show love to one another. To think that we need to step and fetch on this particular February 14th, I think is completely nonsense. It's somewhat dismaying in the comments when you bring a radical idea like this, which is, to me, just good common sense, how much pushback you get. The analogy that I get, and I should probably try to remind myself of this, is I heard someone say one time, if you were to kick in the door to a couple's bedroom at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and shine a 1,000-watt spotlight right on their eye, right on their face and their head, and you know, how would they react, right? Would they respond to that by getting up and getting dressed and getting their day started and falling in line with whatever it is that you had laid out for them? No, they would turn away from it. They would reject it. They would be very upset. They wouldn't be able to receive that much light. And that's the way that the truth is. The truth, when poured out in its raw form is oftentimes, most times, not accepted, and people are not able to accept it. These things, these ideas that we're trying to get across to the young men and to folks are, I have a tendency to come at it a little bit too hard, but time is short, gentlemen. Time is short, and there's going to be those who respond, and there's going to be those who don't respond. It just staggers me at this day of time how so many men can be looking around and not surveying and living the life, living in this country, and not seeing the way things have changed, not seeing the errors of our ways and how they're not working. I've had people came in and said in the comments today, well, chivalry and gentlemen and women, nice guys and all that. To be honest with you, you haven't figured this out already. I figured this out early on in the dating scene. Women don't like nice guys. Women don't respect nice guys. Women don't get excited for nice guys. I don't know why. I tried it. I tried everything that I was taught, the candy, the roses, the chivalry, the putting the coat down in the puddle, all of this nonsense. And where did it get me? Failure. Failure. Never did it work. And I was dismayed. I couldn't believe it. And I tried harder. And I doubled down on it. I was like, well, I'm just not doing it good enough. I'll do it even better. And the results were even worse. Women don't like nice guys. I'm sorry to break that to you, and I don't know why so many people can't get that. Now, does that mean that they want someone that's an abuser or awful or mean? No, it doesn't mean that. What women like is a man that is on his purpose, that is a leader, that has a plan, that is going places and wants to get done. And the attitude that I would recommend you take with your woman like that is, this is where I'm going. If you want to come along for the ride, get on board because we're going. And we'll do it together. But this idea of being a nice guy is not going to work for you. And if you wanted the quickest way to be put in the friend zone and to lose the respect and admiration of your woman, just be a nice guy. I don't know. It's counterintuitive. I understand it. There's a lot of guys that can't figure this out or will not accept it. But that's why you don't have the respect of your woman. That's why your woman left you in many cases, because it's not always your fault. You were lied to. We were misled. We were told that. Never ever, and I'll close with this, never ever take advice of what a woman wants from a woman. If you do that, then you will be in good shape. So one quick note before we do the lighting of the lantern. I wanted to recommend a book that's a very important book that you should have in your library. Now, a lot of people will say, books? Why books? Books are no longer relevant. We have the internet at our fingertips. We have our phones. We can look up whatever we need to look up, right? Or we have audiobooks. Well, we do now, right? But will we always have them? What if the power's out? Did we learn anything from Turkey? Could that happen here? Yes, of course it could happen here. We were told many years ago that if we were to suffer a major earthquake here, which we're an earthquake country. We live in the land of rivers, which mean bridges, right? Earthquake, even maybe a huge volcano. We live in the Ring of Fire. That it'd be possible if it were statewide or covered a large area. We could expect in a rural area not to be able to receive any infrastructure help for probably a year, maybe better. And I don't deny it whatsoever. I talked yesterday, or I guess it was today's video, how fragile the power grid is. And many people came out that work in these industries and said, oh, it's not only the power grid, it is the food industry. It is liquid propane, it is natural gas. I had heard all sorts of things from insiders. And a perfect example that I always cite, not too far from here, someone ran up over a fence into a natural gas substation. It wasn't a huge one. I don't know, maybe it measured, if you look at it now, you probably measured maybe 75 feet by 50 feet or 60 feet, but it's got a bunch of pipes and different things sticking out of the ground. No one ever paid any attention to it. Well, a car ran up over there, and this was in good times. This is in the time where we don't have any emergencies, where you can pour all the resources in the world to repairing this. This was a major catastrophe. It cut out gas for an entire city, and they were there for months repairing this. months. I drove by there several times where there were no less than 12, 16, maybe even 18 trucks, pickup trucks with natural gas guys, engineers, workers, guys that work for the gas company. It was a major episode. It was a major event to repair this thing. And it was catastrophic for the town. And then once they finally got it all back on, they had to go and visit every single house in the city to relight the pilot lights for everyone that was on natural gas. My sister was part of that. That means no water heater, no furnace for a long time. And that was a major inconvenience in the best of times when we had all the resources in the world to pour on this one potential problem. Do you think if we have these resources stretched, if we have multiple gas lines, multiple power outages, you think that this is going to be something that they're just going to come and fix your deal? No. And no one's going to care for you. It's going to be up to you to take care of yourself. I got a whole bunch of comments about fear-mongering and scaring people and the spirit of darkness and all this morning. I don't see it that way. I don't want you to be unprepared, beloved. That's why we're here. These things can happen. These things are happening, and they're going to happen more and more. You have not had to take care of your own problems in the past. You're going to have to take care of your own problems in the future. Now is the time to get prepared. So there's a few things that you can do. I know a guy's resources are tight. I know money's tight right now, and there's not a lot of discretionary income to put to preparations and such. But there's a few things that you just cannot overlook. Dealing with your water. Have a plan for the water. Water barrels, water cans, a filtration option, maybe a gravity feed filter. How about some gas cans? How about 3 months of food? Some flashlights, batteries, the basic things. Maybe a couple radios. You can have 2 radios for $50 right now that will be able to communicate. How much peace of mind would it give your family at home if you needed to leave the home and they're there without the protection of their husband, that he needs to go out and acquire fuel or food or stand in line for water, and he's gone for 3 or 4 hours? How nice would it be with the cell phones and the networks down, would it be to be able to hit someone on a radio and just to get that reassurance? It would be, that value, it's incalculable, the importance of information. Now, how about the medical field? How about healthcare? We have taken that for granted. We break our leg, we break our collarbone, we're dehydrated, our kids suffering from a flu. What do? First thing, call 911, get in the car, take them to the hospital. That's always been, that's the plan, right? Well, what happens if that's not available? What happens if you're being turned away because of vaccine status? What happens if they're completely overrun and they don't have the ability to admit anyone? And you have to deal with your daughter or your wife giving birth. Are you prepared for this? Do you know what to do? So there's a few things that are really, really, really important. This book here is one you want to add to your library. It's called Where There Are No Doctors, a Village Healthcare Handbook, right there. Take a screenshot of that. This was written for villagers. It's used by missionaries that find themselves operating in remote locations, like it says, where there are no doctors. Contained in this book, it's illustrated. It's simple enough for an East Coast man even, to deal with a lot of problems. Just opening it up, for example. Could you deal with a breech birth if you had to? Do you know how to deal with diabetes, allergic reactions? Do you know how to put a catheter in? Do you know how to deal with bed sores? I'm just reading from a few things here. How about lice? How about swelling, allergic reactions? Goiters? Burns? What do you do when someone's not breathing? What do you do when someone's heart's not working? What do you do when someone's arm is getting numb or shoulder getting numb from a pre-heart attack? Do you know what to do with these things? Well, I don't know what to do with them either, but I have this book, right? So this book is very, very important. Maybe one of the middlemen can throw this up. Just grab an Amazon link or whatever and put this up here. This would be something that a guy'd want to have on hand. I'm just saying. Goodness. Okay, let me grab my water. Let's do the lighting of the lantern. My wood stove is putting out some heat today, gentlemen. Goodness. Mr. Jariah started my fire this morning, and it is cranking. Let me throw a log in here, and we will we'll get to the show. Oh, that's hot. Hot, hot. Back that down a little bit. Okay. Oh. You've been drinking your water, beloved. Our goal has been a minimum 2 liters, 32 ounces for 64 ounces. I don't like drinking out of straws. Male proho, masculine men, I've always been of the belief, don't drink out of straws. I've never felt comfortable with that. My dad didn't do it, and the moment someone brings me a glass or anything at a restaurant and there's a straw in it, that thing comes out and it's on the ground. You will not see me sucking on a straw, with one exception. I do use this water ball, which has kind of a straw on it, because if I have to unthread a cap, I get busy. I get busy during the day. I know I need to drink water. I know I need to stay hydrated. It's very important, very, very important. But taking that lid off, it just slows me down. So I do like these. This is a hydro flask. I'm not particularly endorsing it, whatever. There's a lot of these. Stainless steel, you want your water bottle. Get 1 or 2 of these. If you're not at home where you can't refill from a healthy water supply and you have to take it with you, get 2. Get 2, and then that helps you meter it. Fill them up in the morning. You have control of the water. You know where your water's coming from. You're not getting some fluorinated toxin. And I like the flip up. It's good. I tend to drink it more often because I can be working, I can grab it, and it's good. It's a good way to go. All right. No shortage of opinions around here, beloved. I guess that's what happens when you just get old and curmudgeonly. Let us light our lantern. That'll always bring a little spirit to the show. You guys with me on the Valentine's Day? We're going for a non-spill day. Focus. I told you guys I was going to go down to the river, take my thermometer, put my foot in. Still going to do that. I'm going to do it hopefully after the live stream. I was thinking, I've been kind of trying to work myself into it. Transitioning from the cold shower, the 3-minute cold shower, which I took this morning, into the just getting in the cold, icy river, which makes up the northern boundary of my property. I have no excuse. I don't even have to drive anywhere. Look at that. Not a drop. Not a drop. Well, I was shamed last night. My neighbor and friend and fellow warband member, Mr. Peter, sent me a picture. He lives right next door here. Sent me a picture of him up to his neck in the river, right downstream from mine. I said, "How long did you stay in there?" He said, "About 3 minutes." I said, "Was it cold?" He said, "Well," see, he's been doing the shower as well, 30 pumps. Oh, goodness, the delay. Oh. Still startles me. I said, "Was it cold?" And he said, "Well, it was more difficult to get into the cold river." It's cold here, man. It was 21 this morning. 21 with snow on the ground. He said it was more difficult to get in the cold river, but once I was in, it was better than the shower because you don't have all of the sprinkling on you. And I get that, but goodness, I've been watching. I've been trying to geek myself up for it. So I've been watching, there's a lot of dudes on YouTube and TikTok that are doing this. They don't have a river, but they have like, they'll go and buy a cattle trough or a feed trough from the, what do you call it? Like the Wilco store. And then they fill it up and they, you can tell it's hard, man. They're going out there, they do it daily, and they go out there and they have to chip off the ice on the top, and they're out there. I don't know how cold it is. It looks really cold. You can see their breath and all that, and then climb into that thing every day. I mean, it just tears your guts out, I can imagine. I don't imagine you ever get used to that. I heard when I was coming back from halfway, I was listening to a bunch of Wim Hof and a bunch of different podcasts, and someone asked him, after all this time of doing this and going to be in the grandfather of the whole movement, you're probably used to it right now. You probably look forward to it or enjoy it. He said, hell no, I don't. He goes, I hate it. Still hate it, but I do it because of the benefits. All right, I have to say, gentlemen, that was a pretty flawless lighting of the lantern. I think we've turned a corner on this whole thing. But just like the ocean, never turn your back on it. As soon as you do, it'll bite you. All right, let us jump in and get the show started here. All right, goodness, we have a brand new member. Let's start off with a brand new member. I'm excited to see that. We're getting very close, beloved. We're going to be able to, if I get a few more members, we might even be able to surpass it today. We're going to be able to pick the brand new emoji, the members only emoji, which are very fun. You can see, if our members will throw them up there, the last three emojis that you guys chose, I leave it up to you to choose them, was our friend Wim Hof, and my barefoot, which is kind of gross, but you requested it, and there it is, and the snow biking emoji. So who's going to pick the next one? That could be you. So put your suggestions in there, and the middlemen will be watching those and forwarding those to me. All right, but welcome, Beard Nye the Drum Guy. Glad to have you here. We have a super chat from Joker Dog 167. Shout out to you, Joker Dog. And Joker Dog says, the book of Numbers a good place to start? The book of Numbers, if you're talking about the Old Testament books, the 66 books, I would say probably not. It's a good idea to get a good context of what's going on. What I would recommend is to get a good reading plan. And kind of a fun way to do it, I brought this up a couple weeks ago, is if you go to the App Store, any App Store is going to have it, go to DAB, Daily Audio Bible. Daily Audio Bible is a daily short podcast that you can subscribe to and participate with, or you can go back and listen to, that goes through the entire 66 books over the period of a year. And the end of it, they give us kind of an interesting little take on what you read that helps put it into context if you're a new reader. I would highly recommend this. I would follow the plan. You can download it on your phone. Just follow it along. It will schedule you and give you the ability to go through the 66 with good context over the course of a year. That's what I would recommend. But just to dump in, if you're talking about the Old Testament, just to jump into the book of Numbers without any context of what's going on and the story of the children of Israel and stuff, that it could be somewhat confusing. Now, not that you can't do it. I'm not telling you to do what you want to do. I'm just telling you I don't know that that's the place that I would start. And I would advise you, even if you're new for the first time or you've been through it 100 or 1,000 times, if you go through it, you resolve right now to go through it. And I would encourage you to do this. Go through it with the one question in your mind. And this is what you're looking for, and this is what you're trying to answer with everything you read for the next year. What is what I'm reading? This story, this allegory, what is this telling me about the character of God, of who He is? Because as a person that's reading through for the first time, that is a seeker of truth, that wants to know, is there something to this? Wants to be on the right side, doesn't want to be fighting against God, but maybe hasn't been taught, or maybe has been raised in an environment that was taught poorly and has a bad taste in their mouth about our Heavenly Father. Going through it with the question of what is this telling us about the character of God will help you to see things in a very different perspective. I would like to do I would like to do it myself. I would like, I can't commit to this. I don't even know how I'd find the time, but if and when in the future, when I could find the time where we could do this, where we could sit down and do a daily video and commit 1 year. 1 year, we're going to go from cover to cover. We're going to go through the whole thing. We're going to read it. There'll be a reading list. You will read ahead. Then we'll get together for the video and we'll have a discussion. Discuss what it is that we read. And we're not going to get bogged down with going down rabbit holes. We're not going to get bogged down with how did Noah get all those animals on the ark? And did Jonah really spend 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish? And did Jesus really walk on water? And did Moses part the Red, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? You can get down those rabbit holes and it gets you away from the purpose. So you almost need to have, with a group like that, you need to have a guide. Or if not a guide, at least a lesson plan or a common question. And the most beneficial thing that you can go through that I've found of late is going through with that common question, what does this tell us about the character of God? How is he interacting and dealing with people in a difficult situation? Some short, small-minded, smooth-brained folks will look at the stories in the good book and as if those are an example of what to do. Sometimes they are, but more times than not, they are not. More times than not, they are God finding a workaround, dealing with a very bad situation, a situation that he never wanted, that he never intended. But unlike he's unwilling to say, well, I washed my hands of you, I warned you. Did I not give you the 10 Commandments? Did I not send my prophets and priests? Did I not warn you and plead with you what would happen if you did these things and yet you still did them? Would he not be justified? Have we not as parents have gotten to the point with our children sometimes where we warn them and warn them and warn them and it doesn't work? They don't heed our warnings and the only thing we're left to do is to leave them alone to suffer the consequences of their own actions. It gets to the point where you can't warn anyone anymore, and you have to let them go. And that really is, that analogy of a parent and a child is very apropos to the relationship between our Father and us. We're adults here. We think we're adults. We think that we're smart and logical and always do the right thing, but we don't. We are rebellious and stubborn. We're like little children that want our way, and we kick and scream and bite and fight and cry, and God is there patiently trying to reason with us to get us into a place where we stop destroying our own lives. And we curse him for it. And those who don't know him think that he's unjust and he's unfair. When you read through the 66, asking the question and understanding the context that God never intended us to live here. And just because a perfect example is that God will say, people will say, well, the Old Testament has no value because it endorses slavery. And how could a God that endorses slavery, how could that be of any value? Have we not moved on from this? That's a very foolish and ignorant statement from someone who doesn't know anything. What you have is people living in a cruel world that was not designed by God. He didn't want us to live this way, but here we are anyway. We're living in the world that we created. Slavery has manifested. Slavery was real in those times. So it's a reality. It was a reality. It's still a reality today in some places. God's intervention and what's considered to be condoning slavery is not that at all. It is, here's how you should treat them. Here's how you should treat slaves. You shouldn't abuse them. They should have rights. You have an obligation to do these things, to follow these rules. Don't be heartless. Don't be cruel. Yes, the situation exists. This is a record of God dealing with and trying to find workarounds for a rebellious and stubborn people that will not follow his precepts and his commandments. If the folks were following the commandments that God wrote with his own finger on the stone, would there be any slavery? Would there be any adultery? Would there be any theft? Would there be any murder? Would there be any sacrificing of children? No. These things were not his plan. He doesn't condone them. But he's so merciful, and so his patience is so long-suffering that he's willing to come up with the best situation in the best scenario in a very difficult situation that we as people throughout the ages have created ourselves. So going through the 66 books with this question of what does this tell us about the character of God, it forces you to read the Bible as an adult instead of a child. Someday, beloved, maybe we could do that. Wouldn't that be great? We have a super chat from Mr. Jason Barr and 2-year member. Shout out to you, Jason. Good to see you here. Jason says, from personal experience, a quality IFAC is a game changer in an emergency. My recent wreck, it took an hour to get an ambulance to me, get training. Yeah, a perfect example. And what's the backbone of an IFAC? What is an IFAC, if you're asking? An IFAC is a personal first aid kit. Individual first aid kit, IFAC. That's a military, is it what, I don't know. What do you call those? An acronym or something? So how I understand it is that soldiers would carry two of these, and that's usually the protocol, because you want to always have one for yourself. But if your buddy gets shot in the arm and he's bleeding out or is in the leg from a femoral artery that got nicked, you want to have an extra one. You want to have one that you can use, or maybe you can use his, whatever, but always maintain your own. I remember growing up getting basic training with the fire department, and tourniquets were not used. They were always discouraged. There was always very fear about, don't use a tourniquet, a person will lose their arm. And that we all lived by that forever. I mean, I just remember being terrified of tourniquets. Oh, never use a tourniquet. Well, 40 years of continual war has taught us very different, hasn't it? Now tourniquets are one of the most important elements of an IFAC, because if we're going to think logically about it, are you concerned with losing an arm or a leg over death? Because if you were bleeding out, then what is the point of saving an arm by lack of a tourniquet? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I've read stories of men that went into very dangerous situations in combat over in Iraq and Afghanistan, that actually sewed tourniquets into their uniforms, arms and legs, up high, so that if they were shot or stabbed or shrapnel or what have you, that it was already there around the arm and they could simply apply it. That's how critical these things have become. They're very important. This is something that you should have. When you're thinking your kit that you're grabbing, a lot of us have bags that we put together, a truck bag. What are you gonna have in there, right? You're gonna have your concealed carry and maybe some extra magazines. If it's a cold climate or rainy area, you might have some rain gear and different things. You're going to be putting things in that bag that you're going to need if you had to go home by foot, if you had to walk home. Maybe some comfortable shoes, if you wear office shoes or dress shoes, that sort of thing, especially for women. Women's clothing is completely impractical. So if you have a loved one, a girlfriend or your wife that is working and she has to wear this sort of clothing, you might, if she hasn't done it herself, you might want to put those things together for her. A pair of sneakers, a pair of pants, some jeans, maybe a coat and a vest and a hat, maybe some snacks, water bottle or life straw, something that's like a flashlight, a whistle, just the common things that can be in a small bag that you can, that she could grab and get home if her car got stuck in traffic or what have you. This is just good common sense. This is a good thing to do. But the tourniquet, yeah, IFAC, just like Jason said, the IFAC. The thing that's going to be in your IFAC, or should be in there, is going to be at least one tourniquet. The North American Rescue tourniquets are probably among the best. There are a ton of frauds out there. There are a ton of phony ones that are replicas, especially on Amazon and on eBay. So make sure you insist on North American Rescue tourniquets. If you see something that's a lot less money, they look the same, they're almost identical copies, don't buy it. Just make sure you insist. Look at the ratings. People are very sensitive to this in this community, and they will, if someone is selling a fraudulent tourniquet, it'll reflect that in the comment section. You're going to have an Israeli bandage, number 2. An Israeli bandage is a big blood sponge that will soak up a lot of blood if you had a major gash that has a wrap system on it where you can put this on a wound and you can wrap around it and it will put pressure. It will hold pressure on a wound, which is going to stop bleeding. So that's a very good one as well. A good IFAK is going to have some quick clot in it. Quick clot is something that you can pour into the wound that's really weeping or a gaping wound that you can't stop. Will help that for the blood to coagulate and to stop. And then, as I said, the tourniquet. Those are the three main things that I kind of look for. I would always have a pair of trauma shears in there. One thing that's really trips up a lot of dudes that myself, I've even fell victim to this. When I was responding to bad car wrecks as a medic with the fire department, one time we responded to a terrible MVA, a multiple vehicle accident. So this was on, I always get the number right, so I-70, coming down from the Eisenhower Tunnel into the little three towns of Lake Dillon, Frisco, and Silverthorne. That's where we were based there. And what had happened is there was a lot of folks from Denver come up over the pass through the Eisenhower Tunnel down the other side to access all of the ski resorts, Breckenridge, Copper Mountain, etc. So the weekends are very busy. There's a lot of folks, a lot of families in cars. So we got called out to an MVA, and we headed up, and we were the first engine. It took us probably about 10 minutes to get up there, and what we saw, I was not prepared for. What had happened was there were multiple families that had been traveling together to go skiing or inner tubing or something. Kids, dogs, lots of people. Well, one of them had pulled over on the side of the road for some reason, car trouble maybe, I don't know why. Well, then another car, in their group, there were 3 or 4, they all pulled over alongside of the road, corporately as a group. And then there were even some people that were not part of the group, and I don't ever remember if I got the details on this, but there ended up being about 6 or 7 cars there. And I think maybe sometimes when a bunch of people pull over, it will cause other people to pull over just to see what's going on, see what's wrong. Who knows what, But this is what happened. Well, all these people had pulled over, and some of them were in the cars, and some were out, and lots of kids and lots of animals. And a truck driver that was, I believe the story went, if I heard later, was he was on meth or something. He was high as a kite. Came down there, and for some reason, just plowed right through all of those vehicles, family, kids, cars, and everything at a high rate of speed, 60 miles an hour, fully loaded, 80,000 pounds. So I arrived on this, our company arrived on this, the first engine on scene after about 10 minutes or so after it had happened. And I wasn't prepared for what I was about to witness. The thing that sticks out on my mind now was I couldn't figure out why are all these dogs running around? Why are all these dogs running around on the interstate? It was the family pets. There were bodies everywhere. Kids, people screaming. And I ran into this chaos. We're trained to, there's something that we're trained to deal with, and this was the first time that I ever had to experience it on this level, called triage. Triage is when you find yourself in a situation where there are more casualties or injuries than you can deal with. It's a method to quickly assess who is really hurt and who is not, so that the important care, the critical care can get to the people who need it. Because it's not always obvious. Because what happened in that situation, I remember, was that there was a woman that was screaming, to the top of her lungs, lots of bleeding all over the place, obviously with a broken arm and such, and just really drawing a lot of attention to herself. Now, as a man, we're drawn to, we have an instinct to protect women and females. It's God created us that way, to give us that role. And so that's your initial urge, is to, and my eye and my attention was immediately drawn to that was the most important thing to deal with. Well, I go to this, right? And if she's screaming and if she's crying, she's breathing. You know, that's always kind of was my rule of thumb. You know, I mean, she may be making a lot of ruckus and in pain, but the fact that she's bellowing on so much, that she's obviously not doesn't have a distressed airway or anything like that. So that might not be the important thing. But because she was making such a fuss and the blood and everything, all that, that immediately that I thought that was the first thing to go to. As I headed to this, I start to notice. I look on the side. You know, there's a guy over here that's non-responsive, and he's not even breathing. You know, so which is more important? Which is the more important one to go to? Is it the screaming woman, or is it the man that's been down there for going on 12 minutes now, not breathing, but not making a sound? You know, not drawing any attention to himself. It's a very difficult situation, man. I mean, you have to really train yourself to that. If you roll up on a car wreck, you'll get a tunnel vision. A tunnel vision where you cannot see anything else than whatever it is that's in front of you that's drawing a lot of attention to itself. And they tell you, you know, when you go through EMT school and through the fire academy and stuff, they tell you the first thing, scene safe BSI. They make you repeat this whole sequence of events, these steps, these procedures you go through when you roll up on an NVA like that. Scene safe means, is this a safe environment for me to walk into? Are there chemicals spilled? Is there the potential of a gas fire? Is there a potential of a vehicle that's up on its side flipping over and crushing me or making things worse? So you have to look to that first. Is it safe for me to approach it? Are there power lines? Did they hit a power pole? Are there power lines draped over a car? I ran right up to a car and nearly put my hands on it one time of an NVA that happened, or a single car accident that happened right in front of me. That at the last moment realized that there were high tension power lines that were hit a power pole that were draped all along that right on the ground and sparking. I couldn't even see it. You know, so all I could see and all I could think of was to get to this guy and get him out of this car. But I violated that rule. Was the scene safe? Scene safe was not safe. So make sure your scene is safe. BSI, body substance isolation. You know, do you have, people are dirty now. There are a lot of diseases. Blood can be toxic to you. You don't want to get it in your eyes. You don't want to get it in your mouth. That's why we don't do CPR anymore. You know, those days are gone. You know, these are things that if you have not been trained and to expect this, and I'm not saying just because you haven't had some basic training, there are people that will say, well, you have no business doing anything. That's nonsense. You have a responsibility and an obligation to do what you can, right? No one else is going to do it. Sometimes ambulances are an hour away in some of these locations, or won't even come at all. But make sure you look after yourself. If you get hurt yourself or you get electrocuted, then what good are you? You know, now you are a victim and you've just made the situation worse. So having these instruments, I guess the point I'm trying to get to, these IFACs and some basic knowledge of that is really important, beloved. You need to have these things. One of the things that Refuge Medical, I like to plug them because they're good people. Refuge Medical sent me is a car medic kit that mounts on the back of the headrest of your vehicle. And I love that thing. It's the perfect thing to have in a car, because what will happen, even if you really try, you'll have the best of intentions. I'm going to keep a first aid kit or a trauma kit in my car, and if I ever roll upon a situation, I'll be able to render aid. Well, those things are expensive, man. You know, you're talking $200-300 for a good trauma kit, maybe even more. I mean, that's a basic, that's a small one. If you want a really good one, you're up into closer to $1,000. I'm live streaming.
You want lunch?
Oh, no, I don't. I'll have it when I get back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, think so. Anyway, we'll move on. I don't know what I forgot, lost my train of thought there. We have a super chat from Mr. Jason Barr. And Jason says, I treat Hallmark holidays the same way as I treat sports ball. Yeah, yeah, that's a good way. I have no interest in sports, man. You know, I was telling Mrs. W. She disagreed with me last night. So we have a local school that has a really good. The girls' basketball team is doing really well this year. They're in the playoffs, and I don't follow sports ball. And Mrs. W was a collegiate athlete, and her brother was a D1 track and field star type of guy. So it was a really important part of their family, and she loves athletics. I don't. I never have liked it. I've always thought it is foolishness. but that's what I'm just cut out differently that way. And we like to support the community. I have no interest in basketball, no interest in sports. I don't watch it. I just have no interest in it whatsoever. If it all went away, I would prefer that. But I think it's also important to support our community and be part of the community. So I suggested to Mrs. W, the girls are in the playoffs. Let's load up the family. Let's go to the gym, and we'll show support for the girls, because they're working hard. And we were talking about this on the short drive to the gym, and I told Mrs. W, and she completely disagreed with me. I said, I think that competitive sports like this, were developed to create division among people. And she looked at me like I had two heads. She's like, what do you mean? Explain that. Well, there's places in the UK, I've heard this even about American football teams, where if you were to wear the wrong jersey in the wrong town, that you could expect to get beat up, shot, or stabbed, or if nothing less, at least ridiculed, right? Despised. You're the enemy. You're the opposing team. All these sports teams, I'm starting to think, that have been set up, even though you're in the same country, even though you live in the same state. Let's take the state we live in here. We have to have, because of a sports team at the following town, that's our rival. That's our enemy. That's who we need to defeat. Does that bring peace and harmony and unity among peoples, or does that bring separation and division? And she thought I was crazy. Like, no, it was never intended to be that way. You're reading something into it that doesn't exist. I said, am I? I don't think so. I think that's exactly what it was designed for. We know that at the fall of the Roman Empire, you've heard the term bread and circus, right? Bread and circus. What is bread and circus? When the government became so corrupt that they feared the retaliation of the people, there was no way they could hide it, their decadence and their mismanagement and the decline of the Roman Empire, people started to focus their attention upon the rulers, which were in charge of bringing them from a once great nation into ruin. And they were concerned about their own safety. So what did they do? They built the Colosseum, and they entertained the people with what they called bread and circus. So instead of the energy of the people being focused, or the attention focused upon their corruption and their evil doings, it was focused on the games. And there was free bread handed out, and the people could go there and be entertained, and that's where their aggression, that's where all of their attention was placed. It was all done by design to keep the attention off of the people, or off the people in charge of destroying the country. You do see your Super Bowls and all these things. You do see that this is bread and circus, right? This is exactly what the same tactic that was deployed on the Romans back in the day, and has been used for a long time. And I think if you're going to zoom out on the macro level, and we have to remember, this will never make sense to anyone who doesn't believe in God, that doesn't believe that there's a difference, there's a good and evil, that there's a great controversy going on between the adversary and God over good and evil, right? But if you zoom out and you look at the 6,000,000-foot view under that lens of looking at as the great controversy, competing for the hearts and minds of God's children, then of course these things would be introduced to keep us at odds with one another. Because the most important thing that the most feared thing by the elites is for us to be able to get together and unite in a common way, especially men. The reason why you no longer, as a man in this country, have the ability to form a men-only club. Could be a cigar club, it could be a football, a biking club, whatever. That's not possible anymore. The moment you try to do that, you'll be labeled as a misogynist, a sexist, and the women will need to come in and they want to be part of it. You can't exclude us. It's illegal to exclude us. You can never have your own things. We can have our own things that men can't be involved in, but you can't have your own things. So unfortunately, women tend to follow rules and to be less likely to go against or go out, off the reservation. And the women are being manipulated and used to prevent men from forming these groups. Because when men start getting together and talking and stop being distracted and no longer being isolated, stop being distracted from sports ball and all this nonsense, that's a dangerous thing and a threat to the rulers, because there's a very small group of people that are running things, and their grip on us is very tenuous at best. And they're going to pull out all the stops and cause you to be as distracted as possible. Legalizing the fact that alcohol is so prevalent, that's part of it. That's to keep you down, keep you sick and ineffective. Legalizing of marijuana. Marijuana is a dream killer, for all its positive effects that it does have for people. It also prevents people from achieving things. It makes you lazy, makes you complacent. All of these things are being done there's a bazillion different things to keep you down and to keep you from uniting. And the biggest threat are men getting together, because that's when the worlds are changed and governments are changed when that happens. And it doesn't take very many. We have a super chat from Madrix 303 and member for 6 months. Welcome. Madrix says, added 2 fire extinguishers, 2.5 gallon water jug, or 2 5-gallon water jugs, 2 red gas containers, and extra canned food from the store. Yeah, Prep Life, 100% with you on V-Day. Yeah, exactly. And that's where you start right there. That's a perfect start right there. You don't need to, you can get discouraged with this, because you'll come to the realization, I probably ought to have a few extra things around just in case. So the natural thing to do is to go on YouTube, and you're going to meet, Super Chad Prepper, right? Who's got 10,000 gallons of emergency fuel, and he's got an EMP-proof truck, and all that stuff, right? You're like, goodness, how am I possibly going to do that? Then you just give up, right? Don't worry about Chad Mega Prepper. That's where you start, right where Madrix started, right there. 2 fire extinguishers, self-reliance, handling your own problems, right? A fire is a real threat. 2 5-gallon water jugs. That's 10 gallons of water. If you need a gallon of water a day to survive, if you had to economize, you could, and not clean up or anything, you could stretch that out to 2 liters a day. So that's a couple weeks of water right there. With 2 5-gallon cans, at what investment? $50? Look for these things at garage sales. Look for these things this summer. Get with your wife or your sweetheart, and instead of going out and having expensive dinners and all these things, one of the funnest things that Mrs. W and I do is to hit thrift stores or hit all the garage sales. Get up early. Look at your local post. Most of them will be posted on a local Facebook page, and get there early and have kind of a list. And you'll buy things for pennies on the dollar. You're looking for gas cans. You're looking for some traditional tools, that sort of thing. Wool blankets. You know what to do. And it's fun. It's a very fun thing to do. We have a new member, Eric Luchtenberg. Shout out to you, Eric. Welcome. Good to have you here. And Jasper Young, both of you, a pair of members. Goodness, I'm excited for that. Hey, after this live stream, I'm going to go down to the river, and we're going to go try that out. We'll see how cold it is. I'll take my thermometer over there, so look for that. We have a super chat from Flyfish S. Cook, and new member. Welcome, Flyfish. I can get behind that. He says, have you heard of Skip Ellsworth and the Log Home Builders Association? I have not. I don't know who Skip is, but thank you for that. We have a super chat from Kai, who writes, have you ever had to deal with bad or inconsiderate, loud neighbors? If so, what have you done in that situation? Oh, goodness, I had the neighbor. He was a good dude, but man, he was dumb. I'll tell you the story. So it was at the second house that Mrs. W and I bought. We remodeled it. It was up against a kind of a big, almost a mountain. And the houses were pushed right up in there. And just to the south of me was a big old dilapidated metal shop, probably about 60 by 80. It was big. And there was a man and his wife living there illegally. He's passed away now. His name was Norm. They had built a kind of a little ramshackle little hovel in there, and they were living in there. And he ran a small business out of that where he restored, he's kind of a shade tree mechanic, and he restored muscle cars. Not very well, but just, you know, he was the cheap guy if you wanted like a kind of a rattle can paint job type of stuff. But he was a good enough dude, and I had a good relationship with him. My shop, I built a 5,000 square foot wood building barn that was my dream shop for my Jeep parts business, and we actually worked together quite a bit. You know, we'd borrow and share tools, and he'd come over, and we had a really cordial relationship, no problems whatsoever. That whole time of living there, years and years, I never once saw his wife. I knew he had one, but I never saw her. But it was a terrible condition that they lived in down there. In the wintertime, the water would run down the mountain, and actually a river of water would run through the floor. Now, I didn't spend very much time in his shop, but I heard that he'd had a snap-on welder. He'd bought a wire-feed MIG welder years before, acquired it somewhere, and he was having trouble with it. So he called the snap-on dealer, which was the same dealer that would come by our place, you know, once a month or so, because we were actively had employees, and we went through a lot of tools, a lot of torque sockets, taking Jeep TJs apart. And so he came up after being down in Norm's shop to do, Norm was asking him about repairing his welder that was no longer working. And the snap-on gate came up and he said, "Have you ever been down in Norm's shop?" I said, "Yeah, I mean, I've stood in the front. I don't know if I've really been in deep and looked in there." He's like, "I don't think that's a safe place to work. It's just full of mold, and there's mold growing on the walls." And, you know, Norm was always down there coughing and wheezing, and he was a full-time smoker. He probably smoked 3 packs a day. Well, when the Snap-on guy went in there to look at this welder, he opened up the cover, and it was so corroded from just the moist, wet environment that he couldn't. It was a write-off. It was a lost cause. And he came directly up to our shop afterwards to see if we needed anything. It's like, oh, he told us about this welder, right? So this was what was going on down there. Well, Norm decided that he didn't want to pay for trash service anymore, so he started piling up trash in his yard. And there were, I've never seen so many pop cans. There was a mountain of trash, of pop cans, plastic bags, I mean, just all manner of just, you know, abandoned car parts, dashes, lots of plastic, right? Well, he decided that he was going to burn it. So he set this trash heap, it was like Gehenna in my backyard, this trash heap on fire, and it smoldered forever. And so what it would do, because we were at the base of this mountain, it would, when it was burning, it wasn't too bad. I looked down there and I thought, good grief, is he burning trash? And I'm not the type of guy to call the cops. You know, I'm not a Karen. I'm not going to do that. Norm has been a good guy to me. We've helped each other out. You know, we've known each other for a year now or so. You know, we're just going to have to, we'd have to work this out. I'm not going to call the cops on Norm. I don't like cops. The last thing I want is cops sniffing around. I'd rather have a snake in my pants. So I'm looking at it and thinking, okay, well, hopefully it'll burn off. Well, it didn't burn off. If you know what a smoldering trash pile does, I mean, once that fire gets down in the midst of it, it will smolder for months. And so that acrid, toxic smoke came up against that hill, wafted into my shop, and just the next morning, you know, Tom, the guy who worked for me, and my eyes were burning from this thing, you know, just headache and sick, and I finally said, enough is enough, right? So I went down there and I said, Norm, I said, what in the world are you doing? You know, you can't be burning trash. Oh, yeah, I know. But I'll go put it out, right? So he goes out there and he sprays some water on it. Of course, there's no way to put out a trash fire like that. It's just been burning. I mean, it was massive. It must have been 18 feet tall when he lit it. Tires, there were tires in there. Next day, same thing, just worse, just acrid, toxic smoke. And I got my son, I got a little baby in the house, you know, and now it's in the house. I was fit to be tied. I went down there and I was like Jesus cleansing the temple, man. When I saw my little kid, you know, breathe, my firstborn son dealing with this and breathing this, that enough is enough. I went down there and I told him, you either deal with this and put this out or I'm going to kick your ass. And I was serious about it. And, you know, I don't, you know, him and Hod, I said, that's it. I said, that needs to be out now, immediately. That cannot go on. And he got out there. I think he got a piece of equipment out there. I don't remember. I think we even left. It was just so toxic and acrid, we left. And he dealt with it and finally got it put out, and that was the end of the fire. So that was a neighbor problem that I had, and I think that was the only one. I can't think of a neighbor problem that I had. I did have another neighbor problem. You want to hear another neighbor problem? I had my revenge on my neighbor. I was a boy. I was probably about 7 or 8, and I loved archery. My dad bought me a little Bear bow, just a Bear brand, just a recurve, fiberglass recurve, and I had about a half a dozen little wooden arrows with the press-on tips and 3 triple-fletched feathers, and I would shoot, just shoot at targets out in the yard. We lived in kind of in the suburbs, so it was small lots. There was a mean old guy that lived across the street, and he just hated kids. He'd look at you and just grimace and shake his fist. He was just a miserable old sod. But his pride and joy, thing that he loved more than anything in life, were his tomato plants. It was the only thing that he loved, that he found joy in, was his tomato plants. And he would spend all day fawning over them and digging about them and fertilizing them and watering them. I think he even talked to them. And he had a garden across the street. Well, I was messing around and shooting one time, and I don't remember what happened, but somehow one of my arrows landed, and I was down to like 2 or 3 at that time, landed in his yard. And he had a double lot, so he had a field. It wasn't like it was a danger or anything. It was just a little kid. Maybe he was 6 or 7, just little. It was a little tiny bow. When he saw that, I'll never forget it, it was a baby blue arrow with white fletches. He saw that arrow, he looked at me, and he walked over to it, and he picked it up, and he looked me in the eye, and he snapped it in half. And I remember it as clear as day, just standing there, just leering at him. And I thought to myself at that moment, I'll have my revenge. And so I went in and waited till nighttime. Waited till nighttime, went to my bed, parents were all asleep, and waited. I sat there and waited until I knew everyone was asleep. And I went out there and I stomped into the ground every single one of those prime tomato plants, and there was nothing left. To pulverize them, there was nothing left. Well, it was about 7 o'clock in the morning. Knock on the door. He was beyond furious, and he knew what had happened. You know, there were little footprints all around there where I'd stomped all his entire crop of tomato plants into the ground for breaking my arrow. And he leveled accusations and was just fit to be tied. And he was just a small, frail old man. And my dad at that time was probably, you know, in his late 40s or so, 6'7", 240 or so, just giant, scary-looking guy, tough guy. He sent him out, get out of here. And my dad never asked me about it or anything. And this is the first time I've ever admitted that. But that's the way I looked at it. You know, he didn't have to break my arrow. And it was, I was a Gen Xer, we raised ourselves, we didn't have sympathetic parents. And that may not sound like an important thing to you. Oh, why did you just go get another arrow? No, there would have been no more arrows. That was a lot that I was given. And if I lost them or broke them or misplaced them or abused them, there would be no more. It was done. And I was already down to 2 or 3. So this diminished my important supply, and I took a dim view on it. So those are my 2 neighbor stories. I'm not advocating it, but sometimes you just need to do what's done. That touches on another thing. Regarding the cops, we've been conditioned in this country not to seek your own vengeance, not to seek your own justice. Leave that up to the court system. Leave that up to the justice system, whatever. And I'm surprised that more people, like me personally, well, I'm not going to say me personally, but no, not me personally. There's a time and a place to exact justice, to make corrections in your society, and do what you need to do, and read into that act accordingly, is what I'll say. But if someone harmed my little ones, and I wasn't receiving justice, I would have a hard time, very hard time, not making things right. We have a super chat from Ethan Haymore. Shout out to you, Ethan. Good to see you here. And new member, welcome. Ethan says, opinion on taking a multivitamin for deficiencies. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I don't know that there's any downside of that for a multivitamin, especially if you don't eat a real healthy diet to supplement in that. Something that I drink daily are the, what is it? It's the athletic greens. Mrs. W turned me on to those a year ago or so. She's been using it for some time, and I take that daily instead of a multivitamin. But with that being said, we also, Mrs. W cooks very healthy meals. We eat natural foods. Most everything that she makes is all from scratch. We get in hurries, and we'll eat processed things from time to time. But as a rule, we're really careful with that. So we're eating food that has good nutrients, healthy food. So if you're doing that, I don't know if it's as important, but if you're in a situation where you're on your grind and you're trying to save money in your beans and rice, or you just can't afford to buy produce or organic stuff at the cost it is, it's ridiculous, then having a multivitamin wouldn't be a bad idea at all. No, certainly not. And recommended, yeah, sure. I'm not a doctor or anything, but I think it's just good sense to do that. I've found that the athletic greens are quite beneficial. We have a super chat from our friend Dr. Pepper and 2-year member. Goodness, did I see that I just saw we were at 700 on the stream, 703 or something? That's got to be a new record. That encourages me, beloved. I know I'm not very good at this. There's going to be a learning curve, just like anything, and we're getting there. Overton said to me, I think we're getting in the stream, or we're getting in the groove. It seems to be the stream seems to be enjoyable and flowing well and good participation, and I'm feeling a lot more comfortable at it as well. Rather than being terrified up here in front of you all, I feel a lot more like I'm having a conversation with someone. So it's just a matter of time, but we'll get it up to 1,000, and then we'll see where it goes, man. The sky's the limit here. We can do anything we want to. But we have a super chat from Mr. Dr. Pepper. He says, good morning, sir. In and out today, but voting in support of a weekly fast and recommending a hot bath after a PM cold soak. Enjoying Mere Christianity. Yeah, Mere Christianity is on your reading list. You should read that. It is C.S. Lewis is one of the most brilliant men that walked the planet, in my opinion, and he has the ability. When I first started reading C.S. Lewis about theology, he has such a beautiful way of writing, explaining complex subjects in such a simple way that really helps you get your head around it. And I had read Mere Christianity. I read it a couple times. I read it almost every year. I have read Screw Tape Letters, which is also a mandatory Proho reading, also by C.S. Lewis. And these were the first 2 books that I had written. I read it from him, and then some of his fiction. I've read most all of his stuff. And I thought I knew the man. I thought I realized, you read an author, multiple books, you kind of get some insight, his style, what he feels about things and such. And I even went so far as to go back and read some of the authors that had a great influence on him, like John Bunyan in Pilgrim's Progress, which was a huge influence on C.S. Lewis, and one of the greatest books ever written, a truly divine inspired book, in my opinion, an allegory of the Christian walk. And that's also needs to be mandatory reading for Proho is A Pilgrim's Progress. So I thought I knew the man, and I even styled myself to be somewhat on his intellectual level. I'm reading his stuff and I'm understanding it, and it seems to make sense, and I'm adopting some of these things as my own and such. And then I read one of his, I don't remember if it was a book or it was an article where he was writing to his peers, his equals. Well, when I read this, I realized that I was not on his level at all, because I couldn't even follow along. I was like a blind man groping for straw. So what I realized what he had the ability to do was dumb his massive intellect down for normies like myself, so we could understand complex subjects. But do not confuse him with the normies, because he is was an intellectual giant, and incredible writer, author, yeah. So the daily fast, so I'm going to double check it. We'll make the announcement tomorrow of the date when we'll start. But I was looking over at the Signal app, where my brain trust, the middlemen, operate, and the general could do it for a month. And the benefits will be obvious. There are health benefits for it, and there's certainly spiritual benefits for it as well. So I think what it is that needs to be on our mind for Proho that follows along in this 4-week fast on Wednesdays is we want to be considering and approaching our Father for a common thing. And what that may be is just preparing us for the battle to come, preparing us to have a supernatural understanding of God's intent and of His Scripture. That for us, what I want to be able to read the 66 books. I want to read the same things that I've read hundreds and thousands of times and glean new insights that I've never seen before. That's kind of what I'm thinking and what I would like to be focused on during this 4 weeks of fasting. So we'll make that announcement tomorrow, beloved. Mr. Mason, and thank you, Dr. Pepper. That was good to bring that up. Thanks for the reminder. Mr. Mason, we have a super chat. Mr. Mason hit 3 minutes in the shower today, and he said life-changing. There you go, right there. Mr. Mason, 3 minutes in the shower. That is no small thing. No small thing. Shout out to you, Mr. Mason. Congratulations. Keep it up. This is going to be a routine. This is what we do. This is what we do now, is we take the cold shower in the morning. I took my cold shower this morning. I took 5 minutes, 5-minute cold shower. There's a big difference for me anyway. I don't know your personal experience, but for me, there's a big difference between a 5-minute and a 3-minute cold shower. Because I go from my shower right into my 4 sessions of the Wim Hof breathing method, and then 15 minutes of really, really deep, I don't know what else to call it other than meditation. Where I completely, in 5 weeks, he's taught me how to completely separate my mind from the cares of the world, from the obligations, from the things that I have to do throughout the day, where I can simply, for about 10 or 15 minutes, it just depends, you kind of go with what you feel, but to be completely in the moment and inside of your head and at peace. I've been even experiencing, it's growing, like new things are happening weekly as I'm doing this. I've been really faithful to the 10-week program, not trying to reinvent the wheel, not trying to go out on my own, just following it and just trying the best I can to follow it per the letter. And I told you last week that, starting to feel like I'm just touching on the tip of the iceberg, just touching on something, ability to control my mind, to calm myself, to have access to the atomic nervous system in your body. That's what controls your heart. You know, they've always said that you don't have control over this. It's a good thing you don't, because if you forgot to breathe, you would die. You know, this is atomic, it's automatic, right? Well, WIMs prove that you do have the ability to do this. You can change your heartbeat. You can change the constriction of blood vessels in different areas. You can send heat. I mean, this is all proven. This is not hocus pocus. You can go look it up. He holds 26, 27, some world records where they've put him in the laboratory and they've tested and proved this to be true. He has the ability to do this, and he teaches you how to do this. He answers, when I was coming back from halfway, I told you I was listening to a bunch of his podcasts. And he answers, he has a bunch of YouTube videos where he answers, does a Q&A. And they're kind of interesting. They're only 10 minutes long or so, but people call in with common questions. And a lot of them are about drugs. Like people will ask him, you know, hey, is it okay, what do you think, is it okay if someone smokes marijuana, smokes pot, or drinks alcohol, or does psychedelic mushrooms? You know, these questions all come up. And his answers are very nice. And I thought, when I first heard them, I'm like, oh, I don't know. You know, I've done all those things before. I know the euphoria and the pleasure senses that come from these things. I mean, I get all that, right? And he says, you know, there's a place for these sorts of things, and they're you know, it has been known to benefit people that are suffering from chronic pain and different things, or even depression. And some folks have been saying of late, you know, mushrooms and psychedelics are really popular of late, and there are people that are saying that they're receiving benefits from this, and they're no longer drinking, and they found this is an whatever that may be. Instead of just coming right out and condemning it, you know, he prefaces it with that sort of language. But the way he finishes it, and was kind of curious to me, was, however, I can teach you a way where you can reproduce that euphoric state without these chemicals, without these inputs. And I thought, I don't know about this, right? I don't know about this. The last 2 days where I've gone into, after the cold shower, what I do is after the cold shower, I go into the deep breathing exercises. It's 40 times. Deep breaths, focusing, you feeling your body. You'll feel, as you oxygenate your body, you'll feel your fingertips getting numb. You'll feel your body temperature, everyone's different, but I feel my body temperature drop. I have to, before I do this, I have to put a bunch of clothing on because I just got out of the cold shower, so my body's pretty cold. The room that I'm sitting in is very cold. It's usually around 60 degrees. So bringing all of that excess air in is really cooling my body down from the inside, and I feel myself starting to shiver. And then I can't focus on what's taking place. I can't focus on the changes, physiological changes that are taking place in my body, the tingling fingertips, the change of temperature, the little bit of little buzz or ringing in your ears. So I have to put a bunch of clothes on. So I've got a big hoodie on and a wool vest, and I even throw a blanket over my head because all this is really cooling me off, but that's been a solution for me. So I'm sitting in the dark and I have my wool hat on, so I'm really trying to focus on what I'm doing, right? So this breathing, 40 deep breaths, and then exhale and hold your breath. Just relax, calm, quiet, relaxing for as long as you can. At first, it was about a minute. You know, now I'm holding my breath for 30 minutes, or for 3 minutes, over 3 minutes or so. And when your body, you don't need to push yourself too hard, but when your body feels the urge, when you're really feeling the urge to breathe, you start up and you go through the next cycle. You do this 4 times. 4 times. After the 4th time, as I'm coming up on the last one, I'm transitioning from sitting down, I get on my knees, and I'm getting ready, I'm going to go into push-ups. But the push-ups are different because I'm doing the push-ups with no air in my lungs. At the end of that 4th set, I exhale, blow the air, all of the air is released out of my lungs, and immediately go into push-ups, and as many as I can do. This is with no breath in your lungs, completely exhaled, after hyperoxygenating for 40 minutes, or for 4 cycles. Well, when I first started doing it, I did 20, and then I did 30, and then I did 40, and now I'm doing 55. 55 push-ups, and these are full proper push-ups, not girl push-ups or knee push-ups. 55 with no air in my lungs. I don't know how to explain it, but when you're done with that, to immediately just to keep your eyes closed and just go in and get yourself comfortable, whether it be laying down on your back or sitting, and focusing on just on in your head. Just all distractions are completely gone. This kaleidoscope of lights comes into, it's not even your vision because your eyes are closed. It's just in your head. And this euphoric state that I can only explain, that's very similar to like if you've ever done methamphetamine, just that euphoric feeling that comes over you. It's not as intense, certainly not as intense, but it's very much similar. It's almost identical to what I've experienced with that in the past. But it's fleeting. It doesn't last very long, but it's there. And the last 2 days when I was able to experience that, and that level of relaxation, and just that feeling of pleasure that was completely a result of just chemicals being secreted by the brain. Who knows? I don't know what all these things are. I'm just following the plan. Was very, very interesting. And when he was saying, I will teach you where you can get into a state where you won't need this escape. You won't need these synthetics, alcohol, meth, heroin, where you can put yourself into this state of relaxation and happiness and joy naturally, I thought was nonsense, but I think there might be something to it. It's very, very interesting. Very interesting. We have a super chat, another super chat from our friend Dr. Pepper. Welcome, Dr. Pepper, and to your member. Dr. Pepper says, I bought the Helco Heavywork axe, but the handle is painted. Pretty, but not comfortable. Best way to strip it for linseed oil. We'll get the answer offline. Yeah, mine was the same way. So what he's talking about, you don't want anything on your wood handles on your tools. If it's painted, and this one's the same way. Yours will be just like mine. I haven't found it to be terribly awful, as bad as a varnish, but it's already coming off. So what I did where the places where I hold it is I just strip it off. You don't have to have anything special to strip off that varnish. A good sharp heavy knife, like a bushcraft knife, something that's going to be rigid, you can do it with. A knife is recommended, like a heavy bushcraft knife is best. You should have one of those anyway. If you don't have to spend a bunch of money on a good bushcraft knife. A good bushcraft knife is going to run you in the $300 to $500 range for something that's really, really nice, like an heirloom quality knife. But you can effectively do the same thing with a Mora knife, and you can have those for 20 bucks. So get yourself a Mora if you don't have one. Good laminated steel, Scandinavian, Swedish made, very good knives, good sheaths, and put that thing up there and scrape it. Scraping it is the best way, any sort of a scraper. If you can make your own scraper as well. If you have a file or a bench grinder or a stone, just a piece of steel, they call them card scrapers. Carpenters use them. Before there was sandpaper, that's how wood was finished. And it's the far superior way. Rather than sandpaper, which makes everything, it just tears everything up and it gives it a really ugly look. There's nothing worse than rough sanded wood. It just looks horrible. The edges get knocked off. It's awful. The better way is scraping, because the scraping, if the scraper is done right, is it cuts the wood. And if you get that knife or a proper scraper and just put a clamp on it on the table and then just start working on it and just you just pull those little ribbons of paint off and it'll clean itself up beautifully. And you'll have it's the way to go. Just scrape it. Scrape it off. That's all you need to do. Have a rigid, sharp scraper. Get a Mora knife, or if you want to invest in a good bushcraft knife, do that, or a carpenter's scraper. You can order those online. They have them on Amazon, probably 10, 20 bucks, and that's a good way to go as well. Member message. Rubber Side Down says, member for 1 month. Welcome. Good to see you here. Says, hi, hey, Cody and chat. I want to thank you so much for the live streams. I'm a logger in upstate New York, and I drive 3 hours a day, and I love the live stream. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, loggers, boy, that's a tough job. Now, loggers have to do a lot of driving because the landings, the sites, are so far away from usually where they live. Back in the day, the men used to live at the logging camps. And they don't do that anymore. Everything's changed. So men would go up and spend all summer long at a logging camp. I remember there was a town just at the base of Mount Hood that my old neighbor Henry, used to do logging up there through the 50s, 60s, I guess, 60s and 70s. And he worked at those logging camps up there. And he said the men would go up there and they would live in those logging camps. And the logging companies would even would even bring prostitutes up there for the men occasionally from time to time. Apparently that was a regular occurrence. That's nothing new. That's been done forever. Back in the, I'm a big fan of British history, and I've read everything I can get my hands on about the Napoleonic Wars, specifically the British Navy. That's been my area of focus. So I know a lot about that. I've always found that to be very interesting. And the conditions that the men lived in and fought and worked and such are always very interesting to me. They used to, the U.S. Navy used to have press gangs, and the press gangs, when they were having trouble manning ships, and press gangs would go into the towns and they would hang around the taverns and such, and they would go in and wait for the men to come out, and they would grab them and basically forced service, bring them to the ship under penalty of death, put them on the ship and say, you're a sailor now. And it was not uncommon for them to grab drunk Brits that had passed out on the side of the road or whatever, and that they would wake up in a cot in the hold of a ship, realizing that they are now in the Navy. That was how it was done. So these men were not super thrilled, many of them, about being in the Navy, and would, at any opportunity, would make an attempt to escape. And the only place you can escape when you're on a Navy ship is at port. So what they would do, they realized that the men, they do have needs, right? And the rum ration is not enough for them. They need female companionship, right? So when a Navy ship would come in and it would dock, there were some men, trusted men, that were allowed to have some time off. But any of the Shanghaied men or anyone that was suspect, they were stuck on the ship. They were not going to let them off whatsoever. And the Marines saw to it that they wouldn't get off. Well, an enterprising captain would make a deal with a local madam, and they would a small boat would row out that they called a bum boat, B-U-M, a bum boat, and it was laden with ladies of the night. And they would come aboard and service the sailors. And the sailors of those times, you didn't have a lot of area to live in. They gave you a cot. You had 2 foot wide and by 6, 2 foot by 6. And those cots were stacked in there like sardines. And the men slept, that's what they slept in. And they all were, it was very intimate. And when the activities were taking place, it wasn't really a place, if you were worried about discretion, then that wasn't really for you. It was quite, I guess it was quite a scene below deck, the bum boats. Shout out to Rubberside Down. Be careful out there. Logging and commercial fishing are the 2 most dangerous vocations for men. We have a new member, Ben Holt. Welcome, Ben. Good to see you here, Ben. And Jamie's back. Good to see you, Jamie. Jamie's always been with us here. He says, hi, Cody. What do you get at Harbor Freight? The only thing I get at I don't get anything at Harbor Freight anymore. What I used to get there, I used to buy a few consumables there, grinding wheels, roll-lock accessories and such. Then I found out that they just don't last, and the grinding wheels specifically, some of those came apart on me and scared me. I was afraid I was going to get hurt, so I quit using the consumables. And then, I haven't been there very many times. I've probably only been to Harbor Freight maybe a half a dozen times. I bought a vise there one time, and it broke into 2 pieces within a year. I bought a belt sander, a small tabletop belt sander. No, my dad bought that for me, that I used for a while sharpening knives. That lasted for about a year and broke. And then the last thing that I bought there was zip ties, because they were so cheap, and I bought like the whole store amount. I still have remnants of those that I bought when I was doing my Jeep parts business. I bought the whole thing out. They were cheap, like 99 cents for a bag for 12-inch zip ties. I bought white and black. And they have been okay, but not great. Half of them now, the plastic, the little pawl breaks off and they come loose. And so I don't buy anything there anymore. Their quality has gotten better with some things. I think I see some mechanics using their Icon tools, and their new toolboxes look pretty nice as well. Their old toolboxes were garbage, but the new ones look like to be pretty good. So I know things have gotten better, but I'm not in the automotive industry anymore like I was when I was buying a lot of stuff when I had my Jeep parts business. I have a full complement of Snap-on tools. I have a pretty respectable shop when it comes to even larger tools, floor jacks and stuff. Everything I have is pretty much USA made or Snap-on. And there's nothing I have need of. And economically, I'm in a position where I don't have to buy Harbor Freight tools. I can, if I do need something, it's going to be few and far in between. I'm going to buy it from Snap-on. But I'm not running it down. I'm just answering your question. I would rather have Harbor Freight tools than no tools. I'll tell you that. I'd rather have a Harbor Freight vise than no vise at all. So, I mean, that's for sure. There's been many times in my life where I was destitute. You know, I've been homeless before. I've had to flop in people's houses and been in deplorable situations where I didn't have access to anything and I needed stuff. And I used to go buy from Sears, but Sears, that's not an option anymore. But if I was there today, it'd be Harbor Freight. If I needed a socket set and a wrench set just to put a clutch in my gravel driveway in my apartment complex, that's where I'd go. We have a super chat from Cattywampus. Good to see you here, Cattywampus. Cattywampus says, odd question, but thoughts on circumcision? Oh, I think it's barbaric. I'm not circumcised. Nobody in my family is circumcised. I grew up in a family that was very much against that. I consider it to be mutilation. And I've heard all the arguments and everything, and it's deplorable. If you decide you want to do that as a man, then that's fine. You'd be able to do that. There's no reason for it there's no medical reason for it any longer in this country. But to take that decision away from a child and their first experience in life is to be mutilated right out of the womb, it's barbaric. It's horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Goodness. I would never inflict a child with that. It just is disgusting. We have a super chat from Evan Roach, and new member. Welcome, Evan. Evan says, "Hey Cody, I'll believe it when I see it on live. The river is calling." The river is calling. You know, I told you my neighbor Peter. He sent me a clip last night of him. It was just a picture. I turned it on and it was playing. It was a picture of the river, from water level. And he turned the camera around and there he was, up to his neck, sitting in my river before I even got in there. And he sent this to me, and I said, "So, was it cold?" "Yeah, it was cold." And I said, "Well, I'm thinking about it. You're shaming me into it." And he said, "Well, if you want, I'll come in and jump in with you." And I said, "I'm committing to nothing." And he said, "Well, I'm offering. If you'd like some encouragement, someone to hold your hand when you can get in there, then I'll come over there and do it with you." This is I've built this up to it's become a giant to me. Now it's going to be it's much worse in my mind than I know it's actually going to be. All right. Well, when I'll take you down there. We'll go down there and we'll look at it. We're not getting in today, but we'll look at it and we'll assess it. We'll start. We'll put our feet in it. How's that? Get a temperature reading. Thank you, Evan. And when I do it, I will film it. I will. There'll be irrefutable evidence. We have a super chat from Knights of Empathy. Welcome, Knights of Empathy. That's a good name. He says, "You can't you can't exacerbate the issue by seeking revenge." Now, it's not entirely my fault. I am slow However, you guys' spelling is just as bad as mine, or at least I don't know how to spell exacerbate. You can't exacerbate the issue by seeking revenge. Well, yes, I can. I mean, you can say that. I appreciate the platitude and all that, but a man has his limits, and there is, God has used men to be the instruments of his vengeance and prove me wrong. I can cite example after example after example. So are you wiser than God? You are not. So it depends. I'm just saying it's not that easy. You can't just make a blanket statement about that. God used men and women to punish Israel time after time after time. So they were working within God's will. So don't tell me what I can and cannot do. That's between me and God, and that's a personal thing. But thank you for your super chat. I see where you're going. I know where you're going, but it's not that simple. It's not that simple. We have a super chat from DJINN Heiku. Very generous of you. Welcome, welcome. He says, honor to you, sir. Hope you and your family are well and thriving. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'm here working hard to give my enemies, my detractors, ammunition as to my illiteracy. It is what it is. We're having fun over here, though. We have a super chat from Cornish John. Shout out to you, Cornish. Cornish says, streaming quality is great. Are you with Starlink? We are with Starlink. Now, I don't know what's going on. I'm over here. I'm completely over here in the dark. But what I've been hearing from you guys and from the middlemen is that it's been pretty good. I don't know what the quality looks like on your end, or I don't even know if it's HD or whatnot. It is what it is. But compared to what we've had in the past, it seems to be pretty good. I've had Starlink now for over a year. Everyone I know around here has it, and I have been hearing very few complaints. It does drop out and have a little slow issue from time to time, but it's manageable, definitely manageable. But we've been doing regularly 2-hour streams, sometimes 3-hour streams, and we've never lost a stream, and that's been, we're on episode 26. That's pretty good, man. That's 26 live streams in a row, not counting the weekends. I've never, ever been able to do that before. That's pretty good. I'm proud of all of us. We're doing good here. We have a super chat from Samsonite. Samsonite, 2 words. That's pretty good. Samsonite. It says, if land was developed along your community, irrigation ditch, and the new development road storm drain was designed, engineered, and approved by the city to drain directly into the irrigation ditch, would you file a suit? Oh, that would never happen out here. That would never happen out here. The irrigation system that is here now was put in probably at the turn of the century, way, way before we had any regulations or concerns of fish-bearing streams and all of the things that we labor under these times. It's grandfathered in and is basically untouchable. No, I can't see that happening. I mean, we'd have to have a major, major shift, political shift, for anyone to have the gall to come and do that, and it would be met with resistance. Let's just put it that way. So I do not see that happening. And we live in a county that's has a somewhat sympathetic government. Rural areas are not like city areas, and most folks are on the same page. Is it impossible? Not necessarily, but man, there's a lot of people that would be affected by this, and there's a lot of people with a lot of influence that would not stand for this and tolerate it. I would fight tooth and nail. Mrs. W, well, we would do everything in our power to prevent that, for sure. We have a super chat. Thank you for Samsonite. Yeah, that's a good question. Here's the thing with that, though. I think I should expand on that a little bit. Is that analogy is just not really possible. You're talking about the type of infrastructure that would come into a place that was going to be developed, or maybe on the outskirts of a major city area that needs to be absorbed into that system. This is not that place. There's very limited. There's only there's a finite amount of of homesteads here. And there will never be any more. There we're surrounded by national forest, we're surrounded by mountains. It is a high mountain valley that is with, difficult access into it. The land that's here is here, and it's very strictly controlled. It can't be broken up into small pieces. It needs to remain land. So I just can't see that happening. The road, the infrastructure wouldn't support the type of community that would require this sort of development that you're talking about. So, I mean, it's an interesting question, but it's just not something that would take place here, fortunately. But if I found myself in that situation, I'd probably sell it and move. I'd get further out where that would never happen. We have a super chat from, thank you, Sam. Thank you. That was a very generous super chat of you and insightful question. We have super chat from Evan Roach and new member. Welcome, Evan. Evan writes, hey, Cody, when you defeat the river, I'll invite you to the next crayon eating party. Well, what makes you think I don't eat crayons? I don't know why you would assume that. Defeat the river. Is that the way we look at it? That is the Western way of looking at things, isn't it? It's us against them. Competition. Are Americans not the most competitive people in the world? It's been on my heart and on my mind that competition is we've always been taught that that's the best thing that we could achieve to do, and we should always achieve to be better and better than our fellow. But God's really been showing me that there is no love in competition. And people that live in harmony, the body of Christ does not compete with itself. And I wonder if this outlook, I don't wonder, I'm already starting to understand that this outlook, and I'm not picking on you, it just brings up an interesting point about defeating something, defeating the river. That's the way we've looked at it as Americans. Our job is to overcome and to defeat our environment, to make it submit to us, to make it work for us. And if we don't like the way it's treating us, or if it's dangerous, then we change it. We make it conform to our needs. And where is that getting us? I think the way I'd rather look at it, here I go into my hippy-dippy nonsense. The way I'd like to look at it is, rather than defeating the river, would be to more being in harmony with the river, or learning from the river, or being part of the river rather than defeating the river. If I have to go there and defeat the cold through my own will and determination, I wonder if there's any lesson in there for me, or am I just forcing myself to do something rather than learning from the cold and from the river, maybe that being more of a teacher than an opponent. Man, we're getting into some deep things that we can't understand here. God is moving upon his people, beloved. It's a difficult time, this time of ignorance, or this time of, not ignorance, the type of coming out of ignorance, this time of awakening is a good way to put it. Because we're awakening to things that we don't completely understand. We can tell something is not right, but we don't necessarily know what the answer is, and that puts us in a frustrating position for, as Americans, we like to know. We like to make things happen. We like to control. I'm starting to think that we're not the good guys, to be honest with you. To be truly honest with you. "40 years of constant war, abusing people, forcing our will all over the country. I don't know that we're the good guys, to be honest with you. As much as that pains me to say it, because I've always thought we were. We have a super chat, another super chat from Yazin, and new member. Thank you, Yazin. Very generous of you. Yazin says, do you think Greater Idaho can actually happen? Thank you for everything you and Mrs. W do love. Mrs. W, love from Holland. Man, it's a great dream, isn't it? Seceding from this corrupt regime sounds very, very good. I don't see the federal government allowing that to happen. I think they would come in and they would squash the movement. They would do a Ruby Ridge on whoever the leaders were, a Waco, and respond with such a great overreaction that it would frighten anyone else from any upstart that would come after that. With that being said, the only way I could see that possible, this is just me thinking off the top of my head, would be that if the federal government was so other occupied in different arenas where it did no longer had the ability to respond adequately to a grassroots movement to do that, then it could definitely happen. I could certainly see that happen. I could certainly see the rural people in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho just shaking off the shackles of an oversight of what's taking place in Salem and in Olympia at the capitals, at the liberal capitals, and just saying, you know what, we're not paying anything into you anymore. We'll form our own central government. We will take care of our own roads. Hopefully they would throw off the shackles of federal funding and just look to things locally. I think, we may be forced to. I don't know. It's interesting. It'll be an interesting thing to see. It'd be interesting. I would love to be part of that. But whether or not it happens, I just don't know. But there's a growing movement. I mean, at least that would have been crazy talk even 3 years ago. Crazy talk. It's not crazy talk anymore. It's on people's lips. It's on people's hearts and minds. Yeah, greetings from Holland. Well, maybe we'll see you. Maybe we'll see you this summer. We'll be going there, Lord willing. Our friend Tony Baloney's here, and 1 month member. Welcome. Shout out to you. Tony says, did you build the drying rack in the background? I did. Yeah, I built 2 of them. I did a video on it. I think there's a video on my channel. If you have a fireplace or a wood stove, this is a good project you could do very simply with a table saw. You just need a little gate, 3 gate hinges, and this is a 1x4. 2 hinges there, 1 hinge on this. You just chisel a little notch right there, and these arms spread out. It's not very strong, it's delicate, but you don't put heavy things on it. You're not hanging coats on this. You're just hanging like hats and gloves and socks, things like that. Rags. I wash my microfiber rags and hang them up here to dry. Yeah, but I did a video on it. I think it has all the dimensions and stuff, such. So if you want to build one, you could do that. It's an old design. It's an old design, but a good design. Thank you, Tony. We have a super chat from Mr. Chris Hall, and new member. Welcome, welcome. He says, "What are your thoughts on home carry?" I do. For the most part, yeah, I do. I carry a G26 right here on the outside of the waistband. If I don't, I have I hate to see. I have a bag that I started carrying. I don't want to get confused with me. People think I'm carrying a purse around, but it just became a necessity for me in my lifestyle because I will edit videos and I like to hang out in the house. I like to be around my family as much as possible. So when I'm done with the shop, I don't spend as much time in the shop as I used to. So having multiple locations, there's so much stuff I have to carry around, and microphones and water bottles and different things. I was making multiple trips or calling Mrs. W and asking her to bring something out that I forgot. So I started carrying this bag. Let me show you this. I found the best bag. If you want just a general purpose EDC bag that just help you out throughout the day, that you can throw stuff in, that you can easy to act stuff out of, that's simple, I found the perfect one. And I don't use it for what it was intended for. I bought a new Climb. I had a bad snow bike crash last year and broke my helmet. I had an F3 helmet, carbon helmet, Climb, and I cracked it last year on a bad snow bike crash. So when I replaced my helmet this year, it came with this bag. This is a helmet bag. This is the best thing in the whole world. If you have the problem like I do of just packing stuff around. This is a helmet bag by Climb, and they're not expensive. They're cheap. I think they're like, I don't know, you buy them for 25, 30 bucks. Very well made. Climb is an Idaho company. It's designed just to keep your fancy helmets in, right? It's got a Cordura bottom. It's got some webbing on the side if you want to lash it to something. I've never used that. 2 handles. A mesh pocket on the outside for little ancillary things. Usually this is perfect for your phone. Some cords. If you have cords, phone cords, or charging cords, I wrap them up and put them in there. But what's good about this bag is it's square. It's a cube. It's got a double zipper, single pull top, and because it's got a wide opening, you're not going through a single crease. You know, you have a big wide opening because that double zipper on there, and you have just a flat, square, soft fleece lined bag that when you sit it down holds its shape. So it's like having a bin where you throw stuff in. And I can't tell you how valuable. I mean, this is an essential piece of kit for me right here. This is always with me. I got my cleaning rags in here. I've got extra magazines in here. I've got memory cards in here. I throw my water bottle stuff in there. This goes with me all the time. It's just and you sit it down on the ground, and it's automatically open. It doesn't flop over like a briefcase. You're not going through zippers and stuff. It doesn't have any compartments in it. It's fabulous. It's the best. I just couldn't hardly live without it, and this has been life-changing. So talking about home carry, I will usually have my if I'm sitting, I don't want it on me when I'm sitting. So what I do is I just pull it off and I drop it in the bag, and the bag is always with me, right? But the moment I get up and move, then I'll take it off and put it, because I don't leave firearms in bags or containers ever, with kids around and such. So if you want a good bag, if you have the same problems that I do just for carrying stuff around, it's really good for going to and fro your truck. You know, we have a lot of stuff that you just can't fit everything in your pockets. This is the best bag ever. The Climb helmet bag. Shout out to the helmet bag. Man purse, call it what you will. It's a tool. It's a necessary tool for me. We have a super chat from Mr. Chris Hall. Oh, we already got that one. Home carry. Yeah, good question. We have a super chat from John Paul Smith McGloin. Shout out to you, John. John says, dose your faith conflict with your independence. Or dose. Mama. Public school rears its ugly head. Does your faith conflict with your independence? Well, of course it does. Yeah. A stiff-necked problem with early Israel that the Almighty had was he was always accusing them of being stubborn. Stubborn and independent. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it certainly does. But I wonder sometimes, the easy excuse is, well, did God make me this way? And if he didn't want me to be this way, why did he make me this way, right? That's an easy, lazy answer for your question. And you could justify everything that you do, and that's what I've told myself for years. But what I'm starting to realize is that what's made me this way is my environment, and the culture that I grew up. A highly competitive, judgmental culture that is very arrogant in thinking that it's the center of the world and the best country in the world. May or may not be. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But this is the mentality that we've been raised in. This is all we've known. It's called being raised. It's called being in Babylon. And God tells us, I want you in these end times, come out of her. Come out of her, my people. Come out of Babylon. So this is a process. I'm not up here saying I'm a perfect person or that I've arrived. Only thing I'm saying is that I'm here, a man trying to seek truth, that is trying to overcome all of the programming and damage that's been done to me by my boomer parents, by my country, by my crap public school education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything's been stacked against us. Our food, our diets, lies, all of us. Our schools are basically designed to make us programmable little cogs, little worker bees that we could be plugged in to feed and to be farmed for the elites, to provide for the people sitting on the top. We were not educated to be independent, free thinkers, creative thinkers, doing our own thing. But my heart longs for freedom. My heart longs for the true freedom that can only come from being free of all of the insecurities, all of the judgment, all of the conditions that I'm in, and that is what we hope to achieve, to be in the kingdom with our Father. That's the only way we'll ever have peace and freedom. But my soul cries for that. It cries for that. I'm unhappy here. And so I rebel. I rebel against this system. I rebel against how it's limited me. I rebel how it's lied to me and how it's poisoned me. And it makes me angry. It makes me angry like Christ was angry when he cleansed the temple twice, because things were not the way they were supposed to be. So this anger and this rebellion, yeah, of course it's at conflict with my true nature that God intends me to be, that I'll hopefully someday have in the kingdom. But I'm living in shit. How can I not? Trying to manage it. We're trying to pursue and adopt the character of Christ while we're living in sewer with an adversary that's constantly at our heels, that seeks our destruction. So, what do you expect from me? What do you expect from anyone? I'm not saying that you expect anything. I think it's a good question. It's actually one of the most intelligent questions anyone's ever asked me before. And I'm just speaking off the top of my head. Yeah. John Paul. John Paul is a very insightful man or woman. Does your faith conflict with your independence? Yeah. Does that answer our condition? Do you think I don't struggle with these things? I don't have it all figured out. All I know is I don't like this world. I've never fit in here. I don't like living here. I don't like the human condition. What do we have to look forward to? A terrible sickness, suffering, and death? Watch our children die? Watch our parents and loved ones die? The looming grave as we march slowly to it? I mean, is there joy in that? There wouldn't be any point of going on if there wasn't for the blessed assurance that comes through the salvation that can be found through trusting Jesus Christ. If it weren't for that, I would have eaten a bullet a long time ago. That's the only hope that I have. It's the only thing I have to cling on to. We have a super chat from Vox Populi. Shout out to you, Vox. Thank you. We have a super chat from Stubby, and 1 month member. Welcome, Stubby. Stubby says, no question for you today. Just wanted to say hello and thank you for all that you do. I hope the family is doing well. I appreciate that. The family is doing well. Actually, I have some news on that front. Tomorrow is Wednesday. Thursday and Friday's live stream are going to be done remotely. Where? Probably from my truck, or from a nice park if the weather's nice outside. So we are heading out of town. Our good friends, members of the War Band, are coming to stay in the house for us to look after things while we're gone. And Mrs. W. and Jack are heading out tomorrow. Jack has his first big regional debate. And it's a 4-day event in Washington. So him and Mrs. W. are heading up tomorrow to get going on this. The Sweet Loaf and I will be joining on Thursday morning. So we're going to get up early. We've got about a 5-hour drive or so. And then I'm going to get up early enough that I'll have arrived for the live stream. So Lord willing, if I can get a good enough cell signal, I'll be doing the live stream remotely. So, yep, the family's doing well. So that's our plan. So something a little bit different towards the end of this week. Thank you, Stubby. There's a super chat from Brian M. Good to see you back here, Brian. Welcome. And 1-year member. Shout out to you. It's not a purse. It's European. That is really funny. It's not a purse. It's European. Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you, speaking of purse and social pariahs, The middlemen and I, a select elite subgroup of the middlemen, have been working on putting together Wranglerstar merch, which is going to be cool. And some of the things, I've been looking around, and I'm kind of been prepping on getting some ideas of things I'd like to share, things that I would like to have. That's what I'm going to do. That's important to me. And I was thinking, we need to bring back the fanny pack. I may have found a USA sourced or quality source fanny pack. The fanny pack, beloved, it's been reviled, certainly, but if you can pull off double denim like I do, or triple denim, then you can definitely do a fanny pack. The fanny pack solves so many problems for summertime CCW. I mean, it really, really does. Now, Nut & Fancy was an industry leader with this, and I followed he did a video on how to build a really good holster system with a small, really lightweight fanny pack. That is awesome, man. And I still use it to this day. And people make fun of me all the time. But man, it solves so many problems, especially if you like to do stuff active. If you're wearing shorts or you're on the water, rafting, kiteboarding, whatever, whatever you do, it's a good solution. So I think we should embrace it. I think we should not even try to make it discreet or hide it. We should just put it out there and make it as bold as brass. So let me know. Weigh in on that. Tell me if you'd like to see it. I think it should be ostentatious. Something like we might even take the Wranglerstar avatar and do like a full wrap, like where it just repeats the whole thing, like black and white, just shockingly offensive. I would wear it, especially once you know it's got a nice little G26 in it with an extra magazine. That definitely changes the cool factor. It's not a purse, it's European. That's funny, Brian. That's super funny. Mr. Mike Bolton, a $20 super chat. Goodness, shout out to you. That's very, very generous of you. We sure appreciate that. One step closer to our fulfilled dreams. Mike writes, I think we stopped being the good guys as soon as the boomers took control. It's awful ironic, the generation that protests being drafted for Vietnam. No problem sending their children and grandchildren to war for profit. Goodness, isn't that, you said a mouthful. You said a mouthful. Yeah. Yeah, that may be heresy to you that we're not the good guys, but I think I agree with Mike, and I'm not the only one that's starting to wake up and realize this, that yeah. You might humble yourself a little bit and stop and reflect of what we've done and the impact, the negative impact. We've had a lot of positive impact on the world as well. Let's not overlook that. But we've had, of late, more impact, more negative than positive, in my opinion. Yeah. Tell me this. Are you proud to show your American passport when you travel in Europe? I know friends that are Americans that travel that don't even admit they're Americans when they're over there. They say they're Canadian. If you can't own what you've done and fess up to the mistakes, then you can't fix it. The first thing to repentance, what is repentance? We're so fond of talking about that. What's repentance is the turning away from things that you have been doing that are hurting you, that are offending God, that are contrary to His will, contrary to His commandments. That's what that means. And there needs to be some of that these days. And we're at the 2-hour mark. We're going to shut it down here. We have a new member, our newest minted member, Mr. Jackson H. Shout out to you, Jackson. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting us. I'm going to check when I go in. I'll clip this video if there's anything of any value. We'll clip this video, and I'll check and see what our membership status is. If we've reached the point where we can get a new emoji, we might be choosing a new emoji tomorrow. So be thinking about that, beloved, what you'd like to see as members. Members have access to the catalog of very cool, unique, custom emojis. It's the little things in life. But I sure do appreciate that. Thank you, Jackson. Thank you very much. Well, As usual, please, beloved, keep us in your prayers. May God bless you and your families. We are praying for you. Do not be discouraged. We're on the winning side. We have a very exciting future. This is an opportunity, I think, that may be being put into our laps that people have dreamed of for 2,000 years, that people have waited on for 2,000 years, and here we are. So there's nothing in this world, there's no sports ball, there's no distractions, there's no nothing that can compare with the incredible things that God has planned for those who love him. And I'd like you to be on that team, I'd like you to be on that side. I have publicly professed my faith, I've publicly professed my intentions, I've put my channel and my income at risk by doing this content. I've answered the call the best I can from God of who will stand in the gap, who will stop compromising and stand for righteousness. And many of you that are here are standing next to me shoulder to shoulder, so I invite you. Do you have the courage to do it? It is going to be difficult. But we have a helper. We have God's Holy Spirit that will provide us. And we have the promises that he won't put more on us than we're able to stand. So is it going to be easy? No, it's not going to be easy. I was talking to Mrs. W the other day. I'll close with this. And one of you has been sending me some very interesting inspirational quotes and such. And, those things are a dime a dozen. We've all read them, you read them, and you forget about them, right? But he said something, he said, I'm not going to overwhelm you with these quotes, but I want you to know that I've been collecting these my whole life, and I've narrowed it down to 10 that have been very important to me, that I always remember, that have helped me in life, helped me to understand difficult situations. And he shared his first one with me. And he's right, it has stuck with me. And I'll paraphrase, I'll probably get it wrong here, but he says, sometimes we think that when we're going through difficult times, trials and struggles, that God has abandoned us, forsaken us. The good book says that sometimes the heavens seem like they're made out of solid brass, meaning they're so hard, they're impenetrable. God doesn't know your troubles and the difficulties and the struggles that you're going through. Why doesn't he answer? Why doesn't he help? If he loves me, why is he not here? I'm suffering. I'm hurting down here, and he seems to be absent from me. And this quote was so appropriate. He said, the teacher is absent and silent during the test. And I read that and I thought, man, that's very profound. That's something that I'll remember and carry around with me. The teacher is absent during the test. It's these times, beloved, that you're going through your most difficult trials, when you're going through your greatest struggles, when you think that God has abandoned you, when he has not. But it's a test. He's remaining silent because he wants to see who will have the courage, who will trust him, who will have the faith to get through this difficult time. And there's a reward at the other end for those who don't fold and fail and collapse out of fear or anger or just dismay. There's a great reward for those who can see it through to the other side. C.S. Lewis, Pilgrim's Progress, John Bunyan, which was a contemporary, I guess, of C.S. Lewis, wrote the incredible book, most popular book second to the Bible in history, called The Pilgrim's Progress. It's mandatory reading. And it's a story, it's an allegory, it's told in allegorical form of the main character, his name is Christian. And it's the story told through kind of a fairy tale, allegory, of a man that comes to the knowledge that he's dead in his sin. And he comes to the knowledge that there is a God, and with that knowledge that there is an obligation, there is an expectation, and this Christian journey, this lifelong journey, is told in this brilliant book through the story as a journey. And one of the things that happens midway through the journey is, as he's going along, this Christian character, he's going up a mountain path. It's very steep and rugged, difficult going, dangerous. But he continues to go forward, one step after another, forward. And as he's about to the top, there comes a man running down the hill towards him, screaming and terrified, absolutely just wrecked with fear. warning him, go back, go back. There's lions up there. Go back, go back. And as if Christian didn't have enough problems, here we have this man that's been up their head, that's seen what he hasn't seen, and is warning him of imminent danger, lions. And this guy passes him and down the hill screaming, go back, go back, go back. He's faced with a decision. He was terrified. He was having a hard time before, and now it's much worse. But he knows he needs to continue to go forward, so he creeps forward slowly. As he comes around the bend, he starts to hear them, and indeed there are lions up there, and they're roaring and raging, and his heart starts to fail him. He's thinking, I'm a single man here. I don't even have a weapon. How can I possibly go against these lions? But he continues to go forward because he trusts his father who told him that he'll be safe. He just needs to keep going. Just stay on the path. Don't veer to the left or the right. Just stay on the path. Just keep going. Even though you may not understand what's in front of you, just keep going. He gets closer. Now he sees the lions. They come into view, and they're roaring, and they're furious, and they're very dangerous. And his heart is just about to beat out of his chest, scared to death. But he continues on because he trusts his father. His father told him if he stays on the path, he'll be okay. As he gets closer and closer to the lions, he starts to realize something. These lions are tethered. They're chained up. They have collars on them. And they're limited. They can't access the trail. They're close. You can feel their breath. You can smell them. You can. It's pretty frightening. But he realizes that they're tethered. They don't have the ability to cross the path. And if a pilgrim were to stay directly on the path and not step off, you step off 1 inch, they'll tear you, destroy you. But if you stay on that path, you can safely pass between them. And that's what he does. And that is such a great allegory, because what looks so frightful, so fearful, like we just can't overcome it, it would be impossible. No way. Well, we don't see things clearly. And sometimes we just need to move forward a little bit and trust in our Father that He knows what we have need of before we ask. And just like Christian, how he passed safely right between those vicious animals because he stayed on the righteous path and was able to overcome that because he trusted his Father even when he couldn't see it, a safe route. He was able to enter into the promised land. Now, that book is very important, and those lessons and those allegories that John Bunyan wrote down in The Pilgrim's Progress, I have no doubt are divinely inspired and are a beautiful parallel to the 66 books. Thank you, beloved. We'll see you on tomorrow's stream.